Chapter 31. Dual Lives and Hidden Struggles. Zeus rode with measured precision through the winding tunnels beneath his uncle's mansion, the echo of the Centaur 32X reverberating through the stone corridors like the dying refrain of a battle hymn. The rush of combat had long since faded, leaving behind a deeper exhaustion, not just in his muscles, but in his spirit. As the bike slowed onto the hidden platform, the air grew still. He dismounted with a muted sigh, feeling the weight of the night settle across his shoulders. Victory had never felt heavier. With a quick motion, he tapped the nanolinker. A cascade of light rippled across his body as the armor dissolved into motes of blue, replaced by denim, cotton, and skin. The Titan vanished, leaving only the boy behind. Zeus was gone. Now there was only Nick. "Apollo," he called, his voice steady but worn out as he crossed toward the command console. "Any messages waiting for me?" "I'm afraid not, sir," came the calm reply. "Captain Rhodes appears to be engaged in a personal operation. No new correspondence logged." Nick exhaled softly, disappointment flickering in his chest before he pushed it down. Gina's voice had become an anchor in the storm. Her briefings, her advice, and her quiet humor. But silence had its own way of reminding him how alone he really was when the helmet came off. "Fair enough," he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. "I should head upstairs. The others are probably wondering why I've been gone so long." He turned toward the elevator platform. As it began its slow ascent through the underground levels, the hum of machinery mingled with the churn of his thoughts. Images from the night replayed in relentless succession. The scream of engines, the shattering glass, the moment Tom's arrogance gave way to terror. The chase still throbbed behind his eyes, not as triumph, but as weight. A dull ache pulsed through his right shoulder, spreading across his arm. He winced, rolling the joint. The armor had protected him from the worst, but bruises and strains had a way of slipping through. Pain was part of the ritual, now. The proof that he was still human beneath the plating. Leonard in Canary Wharf, the midnight marauders tonight. The two incidents occurred less than 12 hours apart, and both were nearly fatal. How much longer could he keep this pace before something finally broke? He made a mental note. Long sleeves tomorrow. He couldn't risk questions. Not from Connor's curious grin, or Anne's intuition, or May's maternal eye. They couldn't know. No one could. For their safety and for his. The lift came to a halt, and with a faint mechanical hiss, the hidden floor in his uncle's office slid aside. Warm lamplight spilt into the shaft, soft and golden after the neon harshness of the city below. Nick stepped forward, trading steel and smoke for polished wood and the faint scent of books. The contrast was almost surreal. The mansion above felt like another universe, calm, civilized, a world untouched by chaos. He leaned against the edge of his uncle's desk, letting the silence breathe around him. For a few seconds, he allowed himself the rare luxury of stillness. In a few minutes, he'd walk out of this room as if nothing had happened. No chasers, no blades, no screams, no scars. Just Nick Adams, a quiet boy in a grand house, pretending that homework and dinner conversations were all that filled his nights. Leaving the office behind, Nick walked the familiar marble corridors of the mansion, his footsteps barely whispering against the floor. The contrast between the cold subterranean tunnels below and the warmth of the home above never failed to jar him. Down there, he was a soldier. Up here, he was a boy again. Or at least, that was the act he had to maintain. The faint murmur of conversation drew him toward the living room. As he stepped inside, the scene that greeted him felt comfortingly ordinary. The lamps cast a soft amber glow. The television flickered quietly in the corner, and the air carried the faint scent of May's jasmine tea. Connor, Anne, James, and May were gathered around the large L-shaped sofa, each absorbed in their own small ritual. May sat upright, with her legs tucked beneath her, tablet balanced in her lap as she reviewed lesson plans, her brow creased in that familiar look of serene focus. Connor was by the bookcase, scanning the rows of pristine hardbacks, rare printed editions, some centuries old. He reached toward one before Apollo's polite voice echoed faintly from the room's intercom. "I wouldn't recommend that, Mr. Jenkins," the AI said. "Those volumes are first editions, extremely delicate." Connor sighed and backed away with mock surrender. Man, even the books here have bodyguards. Anne and James, at the far end of the sofa, found themselves engrossed in the television. Their eyes reflected the flicker of the screen, where dramatic aerial footage replayed Zeus's pursuit of the Midnight Marauders, headlines screaming across the ticker. Nick froze for a heartbeat, then schooled his features into neutrality and stepped further in. "Welcome back, Nick," Connor called cheerfully, grinning over his shoulder. "You missed some excitement." "Did I?" Nick asked, keeping his tone easy and light. "Did anything intriguing happen while I was working?" Anne, with her mouth full of crispy seaweed, muffled. "That Zeus bloke is..." "Yes." "Anne," May interjected gently, without looking up, her tone calm but firm. "Swallow before you speak. You know better." Anne obediently gulped, shooting her mother a playful grin. "Sorry, Mum." James took over smoothly. What she was trying to say is that Zeus is in the news again for taking down a gang of psycho street racers. Zeus took down a gang of psycho street racers. And get this, he jumped onto their cars while they were still moving. Then he apparently confronted their leader directly inside the car, on his own. Nick let out a soft chuckle, rubbing the back of his neck as though mildly amused. Sounds like he's got a unique approach, but hey, whatever gets the job done, right? "Still," Connor said, plopping down onto the arm of the sofa, "the guy's mental. I mean, who does that? You'd have to be half machine, or just suicidal." Nick shrugged, forcing an effortless smile. Maybe he just knows what he's doing. The room fell quiet again as the news broadcast shifted. Stacey Watson appeared on screen, reporting live from the cordoned-off streets of Peckham. Behind her, the chaos still smouldered, blue lights flashing, police drones buzzing, and the metallic glint of wreckage scattered across the asphalt. It appears police are struggling to restrain the gang's leader, Thomas Gordon, recently released from prison, she reported, voice steady despite the noise around her. Gordon is resisting arrest and growing increasingly aggressive. The camera swung to a handheld angle, catching Tom thrashing and shouting as two officers wrestled him down. The crowd around them jeered. Someone called, "Oi, mate, you can't park there," and the jeer rippled into laughter. Tom's face was raw with anger and fear, veins standing out on his neck "Get off me!" he roared, flailing at the nearest officer. "When my dad hears about this, you're done! He'll have your badges, you pigs!" His voice frayed between panic and entitlement. A second officer hit his mark, pinning Tom to the pavement, like a stubborn dog mid-tantrum. The camera lingered on the struggle for a beat before cutting back to Stacy, who maintained her composure even as her expression tightened. Gordon's arrest is expected to spark further inquiries into his father's role in prior court proceedings, especially in light of the blackmail claims revealed tonight. We'll bring you more as the story develops. The officer snapped the cuffs, closed, with practiced efficiency, and hauled Tom up. One of them, voice flat as iron, said, "Given tonight's behaviour, breach of probation, you're heading straight back to the Nick. I hear Rapey Craig's been missing you." Tom's eyes flicked wide. For a moment, the bravado wavered. He had no time to plead. They marched him towards an unmarked van. Stacy slipped through the cordon with the confidence of someone who knew how to take a story. Her microphone extended, and she spoke cleanly into the chaos. "Thomas Gordon, Stacy Watson, EMD News. Can you confirm that Zeus stopped you and your gang tonight? And do you expect your father to intervene on your behalf?" Tom turned, spit and fury on his lips, glaring straight down the lens. "Tell Zeus, when I find out who he is, I'll make him wish he'd never been born. And yeah, my dad will get me out. You'll see. A week, tops." They shoved him into the van mid-rant. The doors slammed, even through metal and glass. His muffled screams and threats came through like a tantrum echoing in a tin box. Stacy pivoted back to the camera, jaw set. "We've just received an anonymous recording," she said. "Play it." She raised a tablet. Live on air. The audio showed Tom and his crew laughing, boasting, and confessing. The room heard Tom brag about his father blackmailing a prison warden with vile material to secure his early release. They heard him recount callous stories about running people down and turning disasters into trophies. Every word landed like a stone. In the living room at the mansion, the broadcast finished, and a hush fell. The weight of it sat on everyone's shoulders. Connor, reading manga from his phone, let out a low whistle. "That's it for him," he said. "Done. No coming back from that." James shook his head slowly, the flicker of the television reflecting off his amber eyes. "After this, his old man's probably going to cut ties completely. Can't see the board of directors letting that kind of scandal slide." May finally looked up from her tablet, her tone measured but cutting. "His father's the executive of a high-end fashion brand. Once this hits the morning markets, their shares will plummet. He'll be forced to resign in disgrace." Anne, who'd been quiet for a moment, gave a short, dark laugh. "And that prison warden," she said, shaking her head. "He's dead meat, a kiddie fiddler and a warden. Someone inside will make sure he never sees daylight again." The soft chuckle that followed wasn't cruel, just tired, edged with the kind of bitter amusement that came from knowing how twisted justice could be. Nick leaned back against the sofa, arms folded, taking it all in. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The world was righting itself in small, imperfect ways, and that was enough for tonight. "Still," Connor said, breaking the silence with a sidelong glance at Nick, "I wonder who sent that recording." Nick met his eyes and allowed himself the faintest smile, half amusement, half secret. My best guess? Zeus, he said lightly. With all that fancy technology built into his armor, I'd bet he has some way to intercept communications. Maybe even spy in real time. Anne turned her head sharply, eyebrows raised. Didn't take you for a tech nerd, Nick. A flicker of panic ran through him. He'd let the thought roll too easily off his tongue. He covered quickly, keeping his tone even. Just something I read once. There was an article about modern soldiers, how they use built-in listening devices for intel during covert ops. Anne tilted her head, curious. Really? Where was that from? Nick hesitated for half a second. The Art of Warcraft. Bit of a niche read, but it's good. Connor, sensing the stumble, jumped in without missing a beat. Yeah, I remember that. You were reading it in the library a few months back. Nick gave him a grateful look. Exactly. Anne nodded, apparently satisfied. Fair enough? Nick exhaled quietly, the crisis averted. Connor smirked and gave a small, knowing nod, the silent language of friendship and shared secrets. Turning to May, Nick shifted the conversation. What are you working on, May? Without glancing up, she replied, Tomorrow's lessons. I can't decide whether to start with history or geography. If I choose history, we'll be reading The Exiled Prince, but I won't spoil it yet. Connor groaned theatrically. How long does homeschooling last each day? May finally looked up, eyes glinting with maternal amusement. Breakfast at 7. Lessons are from 8 until midday. There are no excuses for missing the 4 hours of study. Weekends and holidays are free. Connor let out a relieved sigh. Could be worse. But there will still be homework, May added smoothly. Connor slumped. Should have known there was a catch. Anne snickered. And don't even think about sleeping in. Mum wakes us up with the Hoover if we don't move. Ask Nick. It happened to him today. Connor turned to him, eyebrows high. Seriously? Nick chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. Afraid so. Trust me, you've never known terror until you've been ambushed by a Hoover at dawn. That set everyone laughing, the tension that had hung over the room finally breaking apart into easy warmth. Nick glanced up at the clock on the TV. 20:31. Somehow, the evening had slipped away. He stretched, the exhaustion finally catching up with him. Speaking of dawn, I should get some sleep. Today's been a long one. Night, mate, Connor called, still grinning. Sleep well, May said softly, her voice gentle but grounded. Nick gave a small nod and made his way out. The laughter and chatter faded behind him as he stepped into the quiet hallway. The light from the living room spilling faintly across the floor before the door eased shut. As he started up the grand staircase, the weight of his dual life pressed down once more. For them, the night was over. For him, it never truly ended. Behind the smiles and small talk, he carried the memory of engines screaming through the dark, of metal shattering and men begging for mercy. But even beneath the fatigue, there was something else, satisfaction.